Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku lost touch with his classmates. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. Part 1. The silence after the thunder. The world was loud, but Izuku Midoriya was entirely, devastatingly silent. The chaos of the final war had settled into a kind of vibrating hum, the sound of a society trying to remember how to breathe. The sky over Japan was no longer choked with smoke and debris. It was a piercing, indifferent blue. In the hospital room, the air conditioning whirred with a rhythmic sterility that grated against Izuku's ears. He lay in the bed, staring at his hands. They were scarred. Twisted. They were the hands of a soldier who had held the weight of the world, knuckles white and trembling. But for the first time in nearly 2 years, they were just hands. He closed his eyes and reached for the fire. It was a reflex, as natural to him now as inhaling. He reached for that deep, wellspring of power that lived in his chest, the thrumming engine of one for all. He reached for the ghosts, the reassuring presence of the vestiges, the stoic silence of the first, the chaotic energy of Banjo, the warmth of Nana. He reached, and his mind grasped at nothing but cold air. It wasn't just that the power was gone. He had expected that. He had given it willingly to shatter Tamura Shigaraki and All for One. It was the transaction he had made, the greatest power in history for the future of the world. But the emptiness, nobody had warned him about the physical ache of the void. It felt as if someone had reached inside his ribcage and scooped out a vital organ, leaving him hollowed out, light, and terrifyingly fragile. The door slid open. Midoriya. It was Aizawa. His teacher looked worse for wear, an eye patch over one eye, his remaining eye tired and bloodshot. He was leaning heavily on a crutch. Behind him, the corridor buzzed with the activity of nurses and the muffled sobbing of families. Sensei, Izuku rasped. His voice sounded like it hadn't been used in a decade. Aizawa hobbled to the side of the bed, dragging a chair with his foot and sitting down with a grunt. He looked at Izuku, really looked at him, with an intensity that made Izuku want to pull the sheets up over his head. The doctor gave me the report, Aizawa said, his voice low. Your arms will heal. With recovery girl's help and some surgery, you'll have full range of motion. The nerve damage in your legs is manageable. Izuku nodded. And the other thing? Aizawa paused. He looked out the window, watching a construction crane in the distance lifting debris from a collapsed building. Gone. Completely. They can't find a trace of the quirk factor. You are biologically quirkless, Midoriya. Hearing it said aloud was like the final nail in a coffin Izuku had been building since he was 4 years old. I see, Izuku whispered. He forced a smile. It was a reflex, the mask he had worn for years. I am here. It's okay. That's good. It means it worked. It means he's gone. You saved everyone, Aizawa said firmly. Do not forget that. The world is calling you the greatest hero in history. History, Izuku repeated. The word tasted like ash. History implied the past. History was something you read about in textbooks, not something that walked around, 18 years old and empty. The class is outside, Aizawa said, standing up. They'd been taking shifts sleeping in the hallway for 3 days. I told them they couldn't come in until you woke up. Are you ready? Izuku looked at his scarred, quirkless hands. He clenched them into fists. Yeah, he lied. I'm ready. Part 2. The glass wall. The graduation ceremony was beautiful. The cherry blossoms were blooming, a cliché that felt cruel in its perfection. The new UA barrier system was down, leaving the campus open to the sunlight. Class 1A stood in their uniforms, shoulders broad, chins held high. They were survivors. They were the golden generation. Izuku stood between Katsuki Bakugo and Shoto Todoroki. Straighten your tie, Deku, Bakugo grunted, though there was no heat in it. He reached over, his hands rough but surprisingly gentle, and tugged Izuku's tie into place. You look like you slept in a dumpster. Thanks, Kaken, Izuku mumbled, keeping his eyes on the podium where Principal Nizu was speaking. Don't think this means you can slack off, Bakugo continued, his voice dropping so only Izuku could hear. Just because you're running on fumes doesn't mean I'm gonna leave you in the dust. You'll find a way. You always do. We'll find a support item, or something. Bakugo didn't know. None of them knew the full extent of it yet. They knew the embers were fading. They thought it was like All Might, that Izuku had a few months, maybe a year, of dwindling power left. They didn't know the embers had already turned to cold soot. Izuku hadn't found the heart to tell them that he couldn't even lift a heavy box anymore, let alone a steel beam. And now, Nise's voice amplified over the speakers, the hero who led the charge. The symbol of victory. Izuku Midoriya. The applause was deafening. It hit Izuku like a physical blow. The entire student body, the parents, the press lining the back walls, they were all screaming his name. Deku! 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 Izuku walked up the stairs. His legs felt heavy. He accepted the diploma. He shook Nise's paw. He turned to face the crowd. He saw Uraraka, tears streaming down her face, beaming with pride. He saw Ada, chopping the air with one hand, clapping furiously with the other. He saw Kirishima, wiping his eyes. They looked at him with such adoration, such belief. They looked at him as if he belonged up there. But as Izuku looked out at the sea of faces, he felt a pane of glass slide down between him and the rest of the world. He wasn't one of them anymore. He was a fraud. He was accepting applause for a power he no longer possessed. He was a civilian dressed in a hero's uniform. Enjoy it, a dark voice whispered in his mind. This is the last time you'll ever stand here. Part 3, The Long Descent. 6 months post-war. The drift didn't happen all at once. It was a slow erosion, like a cliff face crumbling into the sea. Most of Class 1A had signed with top agencies immediately. The big three of the new generation, Dynamite, Shoto, and Uravity, were dominating the charts. They were busy. They had patrols, interviews, photoshoots, and paperwork. Izuku had moved into a small apartment in Yuzurifu, a few train stops away from his mother's house. He hadn't wanted to go back to his childhood bedroom. The All Might posters felt like they were mocking him. He had taken a job as a clerk analyst for a private security firm. It was desk work. Safe. Boring. BZZT. His phone vibrated on the cheap laminate desk. Group chat. Class 1A forever. Red Riot. Yo. Did you guys see Katsuki take down that sludge villain? Reminded me of middle school LOL. Cellophane. Dude blew up half the street. Again. Dynamite. Shut up. The villain is secure. That's what matters. Uravity. Anyone want to grab Hot Pot tonight? I'm finally off patrol. Ingenium. I have a briefing until 2000 hours, but I can join after. Shoto. I can come. I will bring Soba. Charge Bolt. Deku? You coming? You haven't been out in weeks, man. Izuku stared at the screen. The blue light illuminated the dark circles under his eyes. He imagined going. He imagined sitting in the booth at their favorite place. They would talk about work. Katsuki would complain about his sidekicks. Ochako would talk about the new gravity techniques she was developing. Shoto would ask for advice on his ice-fire regulation, and they would turn to him. So, Izuku? How's the data entry? They wouldn't say it meanly. They would be kind. They would be careful. They would treat him like glass. Oh, that sounds interesting, Deku. You're still helping people in your own way. The pity. He couldn't survive the pity. His thumbs hovered over the keyboard. Deku, sorry guys. Caught up with a big project at work. Deadlines are crazy. Eat some extra beef for me. He hit send. Then he turned his phone face down, turned off the lights in his apartment, and sat in the dark. On his wall, a muted TV played the news. Dynamite and Uravity team up to save a collapsing bridge. Is this the new power couple of the hero world? Izuku watched as Bakugo blasted debris away and Uraraka floated a bus to safety. They moved with a synergy that Izuku used to share with them. They were soaring. Izuku looked down at his legs. They ached when it rained. Part 4, The First Anniversary. The invitation arrived on heavy, cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing. The first annual Heroes Gala, celebrating the end of the war. It was mandatory. Or at least, it felt that way. Izuku wore a tuxedo that felt too tight in the shoulders and too loose in the waist. He had lost weight. Without the caloric demands of One for All, his appetite had vanished, and his muscle mass was slowly deteriorating to that of a fit, but normal, human. The venue was a massive hotel ballroom in Tokyo. Chandeliers the size of cars glittered overhead. The room was packed with the elite of society, top heroes, politicians, wealthy donors. Deku. The voice was warm and familiar. Izuku turned to see Ochako Uraraka floating, literally floating a few inches off the ground in her evening gown, toward him. She looked radiant. She looked like a star. Ochako, he smiled. It felt brittle. You look great. She landed softly and grabbed his hands. I miss you. You're impossible to get a hold of lately. Did you change your number? No, just busy. You know how it is. I really don't, she frowned slightly, searching his face. We're worried, Izuku. Even Bakugo asked about you yesterday. That's like a major event. I'm fine, Izuku said, pulling his hands back gently. Really? Just adjusting to civilian life. It's quieter. Midoriya. Tenya Ida marched over, looking regal in a suit, accompanied by Todoroki. It is excellent to see you. Ida boomed. We were discussing the raid on the new Yakuza remnants. Your analysis on their movement patterns was spot on, by the way. The police used the report you sent. Oh. Good. I'm glad it helped. Izuku shifted his weight. You should come back to the field, Todoroki said bluntly. The circle went quiet. Shoto, Uraraka warned softly. No, Todoroki continued, his heterochromatic eyes fixed on Izuku. You can't use OFA, but you have support items. You have your mind. Aizawa would hire you as a consultant in a heartbeat. You don't have to hide in an office. I'm not hiding, Izuku said, his voice rising slightly. I'm living. I'm normal, Shoto. This is what normal people do. You're not normal. Bakugo's voice cut through the noise. Izuku froze. Bakugo approached the group, holding a glass of champagne he clearly hadn't touched. He was wearing a suit with an orange tie, looking every bit the number 2 hero he was quickly becoming. You're the guy who saved the world, Bakugo said, stepping into Izuku's personal space. So stop acting like an NPC. I am an NPC, Kaken! Izuku snapped. He hadn't meant to yell. A few heads turned nearby. I'm an NPC, Izuku repeated, lower this time, trembling. That's the reality. I can't jump buildings. I can't smash boulders. If I step onto a battlefield with you guys now, I'm a liability. I'm the hostage. I'm the one you have to waste time saving. We wouldn't care, Uraraka said, reaching for him again. I would. Izuku backed away. I would care. I can't. I can't be the damsel, Ochako. I can't be the one watching your backs and knowing I can't cover them. He felt the tears pricking his eyes, the old, crybaby Deku threatening to surface. I have to go, he muttered. I'm not feeling well. Deku, wait, Bakugo growled, reaching out. Izuku sidestepped him. For a split second, instinct took over, and he moved to use full calling to dash away, but nothing happened. He just stumbled, his dress shoes slipping on the polished floor. He looked clumsy. Pathetic. He righted himself, face burning with humiliation, and walked fast toward the exit. He didn't look back, even as he heard them calling his name. Part 5, The Erosion of Self. 18 months post-war. The texts became less frequent. Izuku stopped opening them. If he didn't open them, he didn't have to reply. If he didn't reply, he didn't have to lie. He quit the analysis firm. It was too close to the hero world. Every day he saw reports of his friends' successes, and every day it felt like salt in a wound. He found a job in a logistics warehouse on the outskirts of the city, working the night shift. It was physical labor, lifting boxes and organizing pallets. It kept his body somewhat fit, and the mindless repetition silenced his brain. He grew his hair out. It was longer now, messy and curling over his ears. He started wearing a face mask and a low cap everywhere he went. He was in the convenience store at 2 a.m., buying an instant bento, when he saw the magazine rack. Hero Weekly. The cover was a group shot of Class A, well, the Class A pros. Bakugo was front and center, snarling at the camera. Todoroki looked cool and distant. Uraraka was smiling. The headline read, The Golden Age, Japan's New Symbols of Peace. And in the bottom corner, a small inset photo of Izuku from his UA days, grayed out. Feature article, Whatever happened to the hero who vanished? Izuku picked up the magazine. His hands were shaking. He flipped to the page. It was a speculative piece. Sources say Izuku Midoriya, the boy who struck the final blow against Shigaraki, has retired due to severe injuries. Neighbors say he is rarely seen. Is the pressure of the spotlight too much for the young hero? Or did he lose more than just his health in that final battle? Izuku stared at his own face. The boy in the picture looked so hopeful. So full of fire. That's a sad story, huh? The clerk said, leaning over the counter. He was an older man with a mutation quirk that gave him beak-like features. Izuku flinched. What? That kid? Midoriya, the clerk pointed a lone finger at the magazine. Saved us all, they say. Now? Gone. Poof. My niece loves him, you know? Has his action figure. She asks me, Uncle, where is Deku? I tell her, maybe he's resting. But between you and me? I think he's broken. Izuku gripped the magazine so hard the paper tore. Broken, Izuku whispered. Yeah. Some folks aren't built for the long haul. Burn bright, burn out. Shame. Izuku put the magazine down. He didn't buy the bento. He walked out of the store, the bell chiming cheerfully behind him. Broken, burned out, shame. He walked home in the rain. The water soaked through his cheap hoodie. He passed the playground, the same kind of playground where he had defended a kid from Bakugo when they were 4. He sat on the swing. The chains creaked. I'm not broken, he said to the empty park, but his voice lacked conviction. He pulled out his phone. He had 46 unread messages, 12 from Ochako, 10 from Ida, 15 from his mom, 9 from Bakugo. He opened Bakugo's last message, sent 3 days ago. Text, I'm coming over on Saturday. Don't pretend you're not home. We're settling this. Saturday. That was tomorrow. Izuku stared at the screen. If Bakugo came, he would break down the door. He would drag Izuku back into the light. He would force Izuku to be part of their world again, a mascot, a pity case, a consultant who watched from the sidelines while his friends bled. He couldn't do it. He couldn't look Katsuki Bakugo in the eye and see the disappointment. Izuku stood up from the swing. He walked back to his apartment. He didn't sleep. He took a duffel bag from the closet. He packed 3 changes of clothes. A first aid kit. His notebooks, all 13 volumes of hero analysis for the future, plus the new ones he'd written in secret. He looked at the framed photo on his nightstand. The class photo from graduation. He took it out of the frame and tucked it into the inner pocket of his jacket, against his heart. He looked at his phone one last time. He went to settings. Factory reset. He confirmed. The screen went black, then rebooted to the setup menu. He pulled out the SIM card and snapped it in half. He left the phone on the kitchen counter. Beside it, he left a letter for his mother. It was short. It told her he was safe, that he loved her, and that he just needed time. He begged her not to let the others find him. Then, Izuku Midoriya put on his cap, pulled up his mask, and walked out the door. He locked it behind him, and he disappeared into the pre-dawn gray of the city. Part 6. The Empty Room. Saturday morning, Katsuki Bakugo did not knock. He banged his fist against the metal door of the apartment complex, creating a racket that echoed down the hallway. Deku! Open up! Silence. I know you're in there. I can hear you breathing, you nerd. Bakugo waited. He checked his watch. He had cleared his schedule for this. He had told the agency he was taking a personal day. He was going to drag Deku out of this funk if he had to blast the wall down. Behind him, Eijiro Kirishima stood nervously holding a bag of takeout. Maybe he's sleeping, Bakugo? It's 9 a.m. He's avoiding us, Bakugo growled. He's been dodging me for months. Well, playtime is over. Bakugo placed his palm against the lock. He heated it up, not enough to explode, but enough to melt the mechanism. With a sharp click, the lock gave way. Coming in. Bakugo kicked the door open. The apartment was dark. The curtains were drawn. The air smelled stale, like dust and disuse. Deku? Kirishima called out softly. Bakugo strode into the living room. It was sparse. No personal touches. No posters. Just cheap furniture. He's not here, Bakugo said. He walked to the kitchen. The counter was bare, except for two things: a phone and a key. Bakugo stared at the phone. It was Deku's. He recognized the crack in the screen protector. He picked it up and tapped the screen. Welcome. Select language. He wiped it, Bakugo said, his voice dangerously quiet. What? Kirishima came closer. He wiped the damn phone. He left his key. Bakugo turned, his red eyes scanning the room frantically. Check the bedroom. They rushed into the bedroom. The closet door was open. It was empty. The drawers were pulled out. Empty. He moved out. Kirishima asked, confused. But where would he go? Did he tell anyone? Bakugo saw something on the floor. He knelt down and picked it up. It was a limited edition All Might figurine, the Silver Age costume. It was one of Deku's most prized possessions. It was lying on its side, forgotten in the rush. Bakugo gripped the plastic figure. His hand started to smoke, small explosions popping against his palm. He didn't move out, Bakugo whispered. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut, harder than any villain attack. He ran. Ran? Kirishima looked pale. Why? Because he's an idiot! Bakugo yelled, hurling the figurine against the wall. It shattered. Because he thinks he's useless. Because he thinks we don't need him. Bakugo was breathing hard, his chest heaving. He looked around the empty, soulless apartment. It was a tomb. A monument to a person who had decided to cease existing. He pulled out his own phone. He dialed a number. Todoroki. Get Uraraka. Meet me at the agency. Now. What's wrong? Todoroki's calm voice answered. He's gone, Bakugo said, his voice cracking. The nerd is gone. Part 7, The Ghost. 5 years later, the rain in Yokohama was heavy, slicking the neon-lit streets with oil and grime. In a narrow alleyway, deep in the underbelly of the undistinguished district, a figure hurried through the shadows. He wore a heavy green parka, the hood pulled low. Combat boots splashed through puddles. He stopped at a heavy steel door marked private. He punched a code into the keypad, 0-9-2-8. The date of the day he met All Might. The door hissed open. The room inside was a chaotic mess of cables, servers, and monitors. Screens covered every inch of the walls. They displayed police scanners, hero network frequencies, traffic cameras, and satellite feeds. The figure pulled back his hood. Izuku Midoriya was 23 years old. His face was leaner, the baby fat long gone, replaced by the sharp angles of adulthood. A faint scar ran down his left cheekbone, a souvenir from a mugger he had stopped without a quirk 2 years ago. His eyes, once bright and watery, were now hard, analytical, and constantly moving. He walked to the main console and sat down. He cracked his knuckles. On the main screen, a breaking news alert flashed. Villain attack at Shibuya Crossing. Heroes en route. Izuku pulled up the live feed. He saw the villain, a emitter type, generating shockwaves. He saw the heroes arriving, Cellophane and Sugarman. Izuku's eyes narrowed. He began typing furiously. Sato needs to flank left, he muttered to himself. Ciro's tape won't hold against that frequency. He needs to use the carbon fiber weave. If they attack head-on, the shockwave will collapse the overpass. He opened an encrypted channel. He didn't speak. He didn't use a microphone. Instead, he typed a message and routed it through a dummy server, bouncing the signal through 3 different countries before it landed in the dispatch computer of the Tokyo police. Anonymous tip. Target weakness is rear spinal column. Frequency 40 Hz disrupts shockwave generation. Evacuate north overpass immediately. Structural failure imminent. He hit enter. On the screen, he watched. 30 seconds later, the police radioed the heroes. Ciro swung to the north, reinforcing the bridge. Sato circled back. Izuku watched as they took the villain down. No casualties. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He reached for a cup of cold coffee and took a sip. He spun his chair around. On the wall behind him, hidden in the shadows of the server racks, was a corkboard. It was covered in photos. Not of villains, of them. Dynamite holding a trophy, Uravity cutting a ribbon at a hospital, Shoto waving to a crowd, Ingenium shaking hands with the Prime Minister. They looked happy. They looked strong. They looked complete. Izuku watched them for a moment, a ghost haunting his own life. Then he turned back to the screens. There was another alert in Osaka. A hostage situation. All right, the quirkless man whispered to the glowing monitors. Let's see what we can do. The fade-out was complete. Izuku Midoriya was dead to the world, but the analyst was just getting started. Part 1. The View from Olympus. 5 years is a long time in the world of heroes. It is enough time for concrete to set over craters, for laws to be rewritten, and for a generation of terrified children to grow into teenagers who only know peace. The skyline of Tokyo gleamed, a testament to the reconstruction efforts led by the heroes. At the center of it all stood the new hero billboard chart towers, massive digital monoliths projecting the faces of the protectors who kept the dark at bay. And at the very top, the faces of the golden generation looked down. Dynamite! Look this way, Uravity! A smile for the camera. Shoto! Can you comment on the Icefire Regulation Bill? The red carpet leading into the National Diet Building was blinded by camera flashes. It was the annual Hero Ranking Gala, but the atmosphere felt less like a celebration and more like a coronation. Katsuki Bakugo stood at the center of the chaos. At 23, he was a terrifying physical specimen. His shoulders were broader, his jawline sharper, and the explosion-shaped mask of his costume framed a face that had learned to control its rage, distilling it into a lethal, simmering focus. He was the number 2 hero, nipping at the heels of Lemillion, who held the number 1 spot. To his right was Shoto Todoroki, the number 3 hero. His hair was longer, tied back in a half-knot, and his demeanor was as cool as the ice that frosted his left boot. To his left was Ochako Uraraka, Uravity. She was number 5. She had grown into her power, her costume streamlined and armored, her presence commanding. She waved to the crowd, that signature bubbly smile in place, but those who knew her well could see the tightness at the corners of her eyes. I hate this, Bakugo muttered, barely moving his lips. I'd rather be fighting Inomu. Smile, Bakugo, Shoto murmured, staring dead ahead. Your approval rating drops every time you scowl. My father sends me charts. Tell Endeavor to eat my gauntlets, Bakugo grunted. We're heroes, not idols. We are both, Uraraka said softly, her voice pitched so only they could hear. That's what the world needs right now. Stability. Symbols, symbols. The word hung in the air between them, heavy and unspoken. They moved up the stairs, a phalanx of power. The crowd roared. It was a sound of adoration, of safety. These were the students of Class 1A who had fought the war and won. They were the survivors. They were the gods of this new age. But every formation has a gap. Every squad has a missing beat. As they reached the top of the stairs, a reporter from a major network thrust a microphone past the security barrier. Dynamite! Uravity! 5 years since the end of the Great War. The world is safer than ever. Do you have any words for your former classmate, the hero Deku? Rumors say today is the anniversary of his official retirement from public life. The trio stopped. The silence that fell over them was instantaneous. It wasn't a silence the cameras could pick up. The crowd was still cheering, but within their small circle, the temperature dropped. Bakugo's hands twitched. Small sparks popped against his thigh. Shoto's gaze hardened. Uraraka's smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second, before she plastered it back on. Izuku Midoriya, Uraraka said, taking the lead because she knew Bakugo was 1 second away from exploding the microphone, is a hero. He gave everything for this piece. We honor him by continuing the work. But where is he? The reporter pressed, sensing blood. Is he sick? Is he injured? Why does the savior of Japan refuse to show his face? He deserves privacy, Shoto cut in, his voice cold and flat. He fought harder than any of us. Let him rest. But, next question, Bakugo snarled. The menace in his voice made the reporter recoil. Unless you want to talk about the villain takedown in Shinjuku this morning. No? Then get out of my face. They pushed past the press line and into the safety of the venue hall. As the heavy doors closed behind them, muffling the noise, the tension broke. Uraraka let out a long, shaky breath and leaned against a marble pillar. She looked exhausted. Every time. Every single time. They're vultures, Bakugo spat. He adjusted his gloves, pulling them tighter until the leather creaked. They don't care about him. They just want a tragedy to sell. It is a tragedy, Katsuki, Shoto said quietly. Bakugo whipped around, his eyes blazing. Don't call it that. He's not dead. He might as well be, Shoto countered, his voice devoid of malice but filled with a terrible resignation. He's been gone for 5 years. No calls. No letters. He wasn't at the reunion. He wasn't at your agency opening. He wasn't at my mother's funeral. Bakugo flinched. That one hurt. Izuku had loved Rei Todoroki. He had been the one to help Shoto save her. He's out there, Bakugo insisted, turning away to stare at the gala attendees mingling below. I know he is. How? Uraraka asked, her voice small. How do you know, Bakugo? Because I check. I check every week. And there's nothing. Because Bakugo gripped the railing, his knuckles turning white. If he were dead, I'd feel it. The world would feel heavier. The fact that the sun still rises means that damn nerd is breathing somewhere. He pushed off the railing and stormed toward the bar. I need a drink. Uraraka and Shoto watched him go. He takes it the hardest, Uraraka whispered. We all take it hard, Shoto replied. He just screams louder. Part 2, The Hole in the Formation. The gala was merely the prelude. The real work never stopped. 2 days later, the alarm bells rang at the Dynamite Agency. It was a code red, a coordinated attack on the Bay Area chemical plant. Move out! Bakugo roared, launching himself from the balcony of his 60-story office. He blasted through the air, the wind whipping against his face. Within minutes, he was on the scene. It was bad. A villain with a ferrokinesis quirk was tearing the facility apart, ripping pipes from the ground and using them as spears. Toxic green gas was leaking into the air. Status! Bakugo barked into his comms. It's cellophane, Ciro's voice crackled. I'm on the north side trying to plug the leaks, but the gas is corrosive. My tape is dissolving. I'm here. Uraraka's voice joined the channel. I'm evacuating the workers on the south platform. But the structure is unstable. If the main pillar goes, the whole plant drops into the ocean. Shoto is en route, Bakugo yelled, dodging a flying steel beam. I'll draw the villain's fire. Bakugo engaged. He was a whirlwind of destruction. AP shot. Cluster. He moved with blinding speed, blasting the metal spears out of the air. He closed the distance, aiming a massive explosion at the villain's center of mass. But the villain grinned. Number 2. Predictable. The villain slammed his hands together. The metal floor beneath Bakugo liquefied and shot upward, wrapping around his legs, trapping him. Crap! Bakugo fired downward, but the metal was too thick. Die! The villain summoned a massive tangle of rebar, shaping it into a giant spike, and hurled it at Bakugo. Bakugo braced himself. He could blast it, but the recoil would shatter his trapped legs. Suddenly, a wall of ice slammed into the spike, knocking it off course. Shoto landed beside him, flames roaring from his left side to melt the metal trapping Bakugo's legs. You're late, icy hot. Bakugo shouted, leaping free. Traffic, Shoto deadpanned. He stomped his foot, sending a glacier wave toward the villain. Uraraka! The pillar! Bakugo yelled. I've got it! Uraraka was straining, her hands pressed together. She had floated the entire collapsing southern section of the factory, thousands of tons of steel and concrete. Her nose was bleeding. It's heavy, hold it! Bakugo screamed. He looked at the battlefield. Gas leaking. Villain shielded by metal. Structural collapse imminent. We need a plan. Ciro yelled over the comms. Bakugo, what's the call? Bakugo froze. For a split second, his mind went blank. He was a tactical genius. He was smart. But in moments of pure chaos, his instinct was always attack. For 10 years, in moments like this, there had been a voice. A fast, muttering, annoying voice that would break down the variables in milliseconds. Kaken, blast the vent at 45 degrees to clear the gas. Todoroki, cool the supports to make the metal brittle. Uraraka, release gravity impulses to destabilize his footing. Bakugo waited for the voice. He waited for the green lightning. He waited for the strategy. There was only the roar of the fire and the screams of the workers. Bakugo! Shoto yelled. Damn it! Bakugo gritted his teeth. Shoto, freeze the gas clouds. Zero, get Uraraka out of there. I'm going to nuke the villain. If you use a maximum blast, you'll ignite the chemicals. Shoto warned. I'll aim up. It was a messy plan. It was brute force. Bakugo launched himself into the air, spinning like a drill. Howitzer impact. He struck the villain with the force of a missile. The villain crumpled. The shockwave cleared the immediate area, but it also shattered the remaining windows, sending glass raining down on the evacuees. Secure. Bakugo panted, landing hard. The villain was down. The workers were safe, but the factory was a ruin. Uraraka had collapsed from exhaustion, currently vomiting into a bucket while medics attended to her. Shoto was icing a burn on his arm. It was a victory. But it was ugly. Later, as the police took the villain away, Bakugo sat on the back of an ambulance, wiping soot from his face. We were sloppy, he muttered. Shoto sat next to him, staring at the ruins. We won. We won because we're strong, Bakugo said, staring at his hands. Not because we were smart. If he were here. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The tactical gap was a chasm they threw raw power into, hoping it would fill the void. But 5 years later they were still just throwing power at the problem. Part 3. The Shrine of Silence. Ochako Uraraka lived in a high-end apartment in Minato, paid for by her lucrative agency contracts. It had a view of the bay, a massive walk-in closet, and a security system worth millions. But on her days off, she often found herself on a crowded train heading back to Muzudafu. She wore civilian clothes, a baggy sweater and jeans, a surgical mask, and a beanie. She blended in. She needed to blend in. She walked the familiar path from the station. The neighborhood hadn't changed much. The trees were taller. The park had new equipment. But the air still smelled the same. She stopped in front of the apartment complex. She buzzed the intercom. Yes? The voice was older, shakier. Inko-san? It's Ochako. A pause. Then, the buzz of the lock. Inko Midoriya opened the door before Ochako could knock. Izuku's mother had aged. Her hair was more white than green now, and she had lost weight, the stress of the war and the subsequent years etching deep lines into her face. But her smile was still warm. Ochako-chan. Come in, come in. The apartment was exactly as Ochako remembered it from their UA days. That was the problem. It was a time capsule. Izuku's red sneakers were still by the door, though Ochako knew they were an old pair. He had taken his current ones when he left. Pictures of him covered the walls. Izuku at graduation, Izuku receiving an award, Izuku as a baby. But there were no pictures from the last 5 years. I brought some mochi, Ochako said, handing over a box. Green tea flavor. His favorite. Inko's smile faltered, her eyes misting over. Thank you, dear. You're always so thoughtful. They sat at the kotatsu. Inko poured tea. The silence stretched, filled only by the ticking of the all-night clock on the wall. Have you? Ochako started, then stopped. She gripped her teacup. Have you heard from him? Inko looked down at her hands. Ochako, please. I know, Ochako said, her voice trembling. I know he made you promise not to tell us where he is. I respect that. I do. But Inko, it's been 5 years. We just want to know if he's happy. Is he eating? Does he have a warm place to sleep? Is he lonely? Inko let out a small sob. She reached across the table and took Ochako's hand. He writes, Inko whispered. Once a month. No return address. The postmarks are always from different cities. Sometimes Kyoto, sometimes Sapporo, sometimes Fukuoka. Ochako's heart hammered. What does he say? He says he's working, Inko said, wiping her eyes. He says the world is safer because of you and his friends. He says he watches you on the news every day. Then why won't he come home? Ochako cried, tears finally spilling over. Why does he think we care about the quirk? We never cared about the quirk. I loved him, Inko. I still do. I don't care if he's powerless. I don't care if he works at a convenience store. I just want him back. Inko squeezed her hand tight. He feels he has lost the right to stand beside you. He told me once, in the first letter, he said they are eagles, Mom. They belong in the sky. If I stay, I'm just an anchor dragging them down. He's an idiot, Ochako wept, burying her face in her hands. He's the smartest man I know, and he's such an idiot. Inko stood up and walked to a drawer. She pulled out a small envelope. This came yesterday, Inko said. He mentioned you. Ochako's head snapped up. Inko read from the paper, her voice wavering. I saw Ochako's interview about the charity for quirkless children. She looked beautiful. She looked strong. Tell her I'm proud of her. Tell her I'm sorry. Ochako took the letter. The handwriting was messy, hurried. Scrawled. It looked like the handwriting of a man who couldn't stop moving. She pressed the paper to her chest. It was just paper. It didn't smell like him. It didn't feel like him. But it was proof. He's out there, Ochako whispered. He is, Inko said. And he is stubborn. He is his father's son in that regard. But I think he is waiting. Waiting for what? For a reason, Inko said, looking at the all-night clock. For a reason to believe that he can be a hero without the power. Part 4, The Obsession. Bakugo didn't go home after the factory incident. He went back to his agency. His office was a penthouse suite, luxurious and modern, but the corner desk was covered in clutter that didn't match the decor. Files. Stacks and stacks of paper files. Bakugo sat down, not bothering to turn on the lights. The glow of the city filtered in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He opened the drawer of his desk. Inside wasn't hero work. It was detective work. Project Green. He had hired 3 different private investigators over the years. 2 had quit, saying the trail was too cold. The third, a shady guy with a tracking quirk, was still on the payroll, but he hadn't reported anything in 6 months. Bakugo pulled out a map of Japan. It was covered in red pins, sightings, rumors. Pin, Kamino Ward. Man in a green hoodie stopped a mugging. Suspect used martial arts. Pin, Hosa City. Anonymous tip led police to a villain hideout. Tip contained detailed analysis of quirks. Pin, Nabu Island. A volunteer helped rebuild a seawall. Locals called him Freckles. Bakugo traced the lines between the pins. There was no pattern. It was random. What are you doing, Deku? Bakugo muttered to the empty room. You're running in circles. He remembered the last time he saw him. The night he broke down the door to find the empty apartment. The feeling of total, absolute failure. Bakugo had spent his childhood pushing Deku away. He had spent his teenage years trying to catch up to him. And now, in his adulthood, he was chasing a ghost. He opened his laptop. He logged into a secure server, a shared database for the top 10 heroes. He searched for anonymous tips. The list was long. Thousands of tips came in daily, but Bakugo filtered them. Keywords, analysis, percentage, smash, cowling, nothing. Deku was too smart to use his old catchphrases. Bakugo tried a different filter. He searched for tips that had a 100% accuracy rating. The list shrank to about 50 in the last year. He opened one. Incident, bank robbery, Nagoya. 4 months ago. Tip source, encrypted IP. Content, villain is susceptible to sonic frequencies between 14 kHz and 16 kHz. Shielding on the left flank is 3 mm thinner due to previous battle damage. Suggests pincer movement. Bakugo read it again. The phrasing. Suggests pincer movement. It was clinical. Detached. But it was right. He opened another. Incident, hostage crisis, Roppongi. 2 weeks ago. Tip source, encrypted IP. Content, thermal sensors indicate 3 heat signatures in the north vent. Villain's quirk has a 4-second cooldown after wide-area blasts. Time your entry accordingly. Bakugo's heart hammered against his ribs. The cadence. The obsession with timing and cooldowns. It's you, Bakugo whispered. A grin, feral and desperate, spread across his face. You're not retired. You're working. He pulled up the metadata for the tips. The IPs were bounced all over the world, Russia, Brazil, Canada. But the timestamp. The timestamps were always instantaneous with the events. meaning the sender was watching live, meaning the sender was in Japan. You think you can hide in the data? Bakugo leaned closer to the screen, the red light reflecting in his eyes. I'm not the idiot I was at 15, Deku. I have resources now. I have money. I have the whole damn government at my fingertips. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. May, he barked when the line connected. Dynamite! Handsome May's voice was as loud as ever. Need a costume upgrade? I have a baby that can. Shut up. I need you to trace a signal. Boring. I build babies I don't trace. I'll fund your entire RD department for the next 5 years. Whatever budget you want. Blank check. Silence on the other end. Then, the sound of typing. You have my attention, moneybags. What's the signal? I'm sending you a packet of encrypted tips sent to the police database. Find the origin. Cut through the proxies. Ooh, spicy. Someone's playing hard to get. Give me 48 hours. You have 24. Bakugo hung up. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the map on his desk. Gotcha, he breathed. Part 5. The man in the chair. 500 miles away, in the damp, neon-lit underbelly of Yokohama, the subject of the search rubbed his eyes. The room was cold. It was always cold. The servers required it. Izuku Midoriya stretched his arms over his head. His spine popped. A dull ache radiated from his right knee, the lingering reminder of a battle from 6 years ago. The apartment was technically a storage unit in a defunct shipping yard. He paid the rent in cash. The landlord didn't ask questions. The space was dominated by technology. Monitors were stacked floor to ceiling, casting a sickly green glow over the room. Pizza boxes and instant noodle cups were stacked in a corner. It was the lair of a hermit. Izuku wasn't wearing a hero costume. He wore gray sweatpants and a black hoodie that had seen better days. His hair was long, tied back in a messy bun, with loose strands falling over his face. He hadn't shaved in 3 days, but his eyes were the same. Green, intense, calculating. He was watching 6 screens at once. Screen 1, the news report on the factory fire. Screen 2, a police scanner for the Shibuya district. Screen 3, a live feed of the hero billboard chart. Screen 4, a deep web forum discussing villain movements. Screen 5, a coded email draft to his mother. Screen 6, a paused video of Uraraka's interview. He looked at the video on screen 6. He had watched it 10 times. I loved him. I still do. Izuku reached out, his finger hovering over her face on the screen. His hand trembled. I'm sorry, Ochako, he whispered, his voice raspy from disuse. I'm so sorry. He wanted to run to her. Every fiber of his being screamed to pack a bag, get on a train, and knock on her door. To let her hold him. To let Bakugo yell at him. To let Shota look at him with those quiet, accepting eyes. But then he looked at his hands. No one for all. No black whip. No danger sense. Just bone and skin. He thought of the factory fire today. He had watched it live. He had seen Bakugo hesitate. He had seen Uraraka collapse. If he had been there, what could he have done? Without a quirk, he couldn't have stopped the gas. He couldn't have held the pillar. He would have been a bystander. Or worse, a victim they had to save. I can't be that, he told the empty room. I can't be the reason you lose. He turned back to the main monitor. Work. Work was the only cure. He was currently tracking a group calling themselves the Neo-Paranormals. They were a fragmented remnant of the old Liberation Front, but they were getting organized. They were communicating using old analog frequencies to avoid detection. But Izuku had found them. He pulled up a dossier he had been compiling for weeks. Leader unknown. Objective: destabilize Heroes Society by targeting support infrastructure. Next target: high probability of a grid attack. He started typing. His fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard. He needed to warn them. But he had to be careful. The heroes were getting suspicious of his tips. Especially Bakugo. He had noticed the increased security on the database logs. Kaken was hunting him. You're getting close, Kaken, Izuku murmured, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Always so sharp. He routed his connection through a server in Estonia, then bounced it to a satellite phone in the Pacific, then back to the Tokyo precinct. Subject: Power Grid Anomaly. 2. Tokyo Police Department, CC, Endeavor Agency, CC, Dynamite Agency. Body, monitor the subsonic frequencies in the Kanto power grid. Specifically the Western Relay Station. Pattern matches Quark's signature of Villain Blackout, Escape Tartarus Convict 774. Suggests deployment of sound dampening units. He hovered over the send button. If he sent it, he risked exposure. If he didn't, people might die. It wasn't a choice. It never was. He hit send. As the progress bar loaded, Izuku spun his chair around. He looked at the wall opposite his screens. It wasn't empty. It was covered in analysis notebooks. Volume 1 through Volume 25, and next to them, a single, framed photograph, Class 1A. The graduation photo. They were all smiling. He was in the middle, looking like he owned the world. He stood up and walked to the photo. He touched the glass. "I'm still here," he whispered to the frozen images of his friends. "I'm watching over you." From the dark, suddenly, a red alert flashed on his main screen. A proximity alarm. Izuku froze. He had sensors set up a block away. Someone had tripped the laser wire in the alley. He rushed to the security feed. Grainy black and white footage showed a figure standing at the entrance to the alleyway. They weren't moving. They were looking up, directly at the hidden camera. It wasn't a hero, and it wasn't the police. The figure wore a suit. A pristine, white suit. And a hat. They raised a hand and waved. Izuku's blood ran cold. He knew that stance. He didn't know the face, but he knew the body language. It was a messenger. A message popped up on his screen, overriding his firewall. Text in bold read, "Hello, hero. We know you're listening. We have a proposition for the man the world forgot." Izuku stared at the screen. The golden age was happening out there, in the light. But down here, in the shadow, a new war was beginning, and for the first time in 5 years, Izuku Midoriya wasn't just observing. He was being observed. He reached under his desk and grabbed the only weapon he allowed himself to keep, a yellow scarf. Capture tape. Aizawa's old binding cloth. He wrapped it around his neck. He pulled his hood up. "Let's see what you want," Izuku said. The fade-out was over. The game was back on. Part 1. The Algorithm of Defeat. The attack on the Tokyo Maglev Central Control did not begin with an explosion. It began with a hum. It was 1400 hours on a Tuesday. The station was a cathedral of glass and steel, the beating heart of Japan's transit network. Commuters flowed like blood through veins, unaware that the system regulating their movement had just been seized. Inside the control room, the screens flickered. Green operational lights turned a sickly, pulsating crimson. "We've lost telemetry on lines 4 through 9. A technician screamed, his fingers flying across a dead keyboard. "Speed governors are disabled. The trains are accelerating. Manual override." The shift commander barked. "It's locked out. I'm getting a message. It's a manifesto." Suddenly, the glass skylight above the concourse shattered, not from a bomb, but from sound. A resonant frequency, pitched so high it wasn't audible to the human ear, vibrated the molecular structure of the reinforced glass until it rained down like diamonds on the screaming crowds below. Descending through the falling shards were 6 figures. They wore sleek, matte black armor with no insignias. They moved with a terrifying synchronization. Heroes! The crowd screamed, looking up. But the first response wasn't the cavalry. It was the frantic arrival of Shoto Todoroki and Ingenium. They happened to be on patrol 2 blocks away. "Ida, secure the civilians," Shoto ordered, sliding into the concourse on a wave of ice. "I'll neutralize the hostiles." "Understood." Ida's engines roared as he blurred into motion, scooping up a mother and child seconds before a slab of glass crushed them. Shoto planted his feet. He assessed the threat in a heartbeat. 6 targets. Close formation. Perfect for a wide-range freeze. Flash freeze heatwave. Shoto thrust his right hand forward, supercooling the air instantly. A massive glacier erupted, surging toward the intruders. In any other year, against any other villains, the fight would have ended there. But the lead figure didn't move. He simply raised a small, hexagonal device in his palm. "Temperature drop detected," the villain said, his voice mechanically amplified. "Initiating thermal countersurge." pattern delta, the device flashed. A concentrated beam of microwave radiation shot out, not at Shoto, but at the base of the ice wave. The physics were brutal and immediate. The rapid heating of the supercooled ice caused a steam explosion of catastrophic proportions. Shoto's attack was turned against him. The blast wave threw him backward, slamming him into a ticket kiosk. "Todoroki-kun!" Ida yelled, skidding to a halt. "I'm fine," Shoto groaned, getting up. His costume was scorched. They knew. Knew what? They knew the exact thermal variance of my ice. They didn't block it, they detonated it. Before Shoto could recover, the second villain moved. He pointed a finger at Ida. Recipro burst detected. Engine torque estimated at 600 horsepower. Deploying localized gravity field. Ida took a step, and the floor beneath him crunched. He fell to his knees, his engines whining in protest. He felt like he weighed 3 tons. "My engines!" Ida gritted his teeth, trying to stand. "I can't generate lift. They have our specs," Shoto realized, horror dawning on him. He fired a stream of fire, but another villain deployed a vacuum shield that swallowed the flames before they could ignite. "They know everything." The leader of the villains stepped forward over the shattered glass. He looked at the cameras broadcasting the chaos to the giant screens outside. "People of Japan," the villain announced. "Your symbols are obsolete. They are predictable. They are stagnant. The neo-paranormals do not rely on luck. We rely on data. And the data says you lose." Part 2, The Collector. Izuku Midoriya watched the massacre of efficiency from his chair in Yokohama. His face was bathed in the blue light of the monitors. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic rhythm that felt like it might crack the bone. "No, no, no," he muttered, his hands gripping his hair. "Shoto, don't use the fire directly. They have a vacuum quirk user. You have to overheat the air around him to create an updraft." He watched Ida struggle under the gravity field. "Tenya, torque overdrive won't work. You have to purge the exhaust vents to create a counter-thrust. It's on page 405 of the manual I wrote you." But they couldn't hear him. Izuku had sent the warning. He had sent the file on the neo-paranormals to the police cyber division 3 days ago. He had flagged the maglev station as a potential target based on the villain group's chatter about arteries of infrastructure. But the police hadn't acted fast enough. Or maybe they thought it was a prank. Or maybe his encryption was too good, and they couldn't open the file in time. "I'm useless here," Izuku hissed. He grabbed his keyboard. He pulled up the maglev control system. The villains had locked it down with a polymorphic algorithm. It was changing every second. "Okay," Izuku breathed. "Okay. Think. What would a villain wanting to cause maximum despair do? Option A, crash the trains. Option B, hold the trains hostage." The villains weren't crashing them. They were accelerating them. They were turning the trains into missiles. Izuku's fingers flew. He didn't have a quirk, but he had this. He had the mind that All Might had entrusted with the world. He bypassed the main firewall. He couldn't stop the trains, the villains had hardware control. But he could change the tracks. "If I switch line 4 to the maintenance loop," he muttered, eyes darting between 3 screens, "and reroute line 9 to the freight yard, I can prevent the collision." He typed the commands. "Access denied? Come on." He routed the signal through the villain's own open port on the microwave device. A backdoor he had spotted when the villain fired the weapon. "Access granted?" He slammed the enter key. On the live news feed, the reporter gasped. "The trains! They're swerving! They're heading away from the station." In the control room, the villain leader looked at his datapad, confused. "Rerouting? Who is doing that? The system is air-gapped." Izuku slumped back in his chair, sweat dripping down his nose. He had saved the passengers, but Shoto and Ida were still pinned down. He pulled up a new window. He began to type. This wasn't code. This was a message. He needed to get tactical data to the heroes now. But he couldn't just radio them. He had to send it to the one person who would read it, understand it, and act on it without asking questions. He hesitated. Sending this directly to him was dangerous. It was practically signing his name. But on the screen, Shoto took a heavy blow to the stomach. Izuku's eyes hardened. He didn't care about being found. He cared about them surviving. He opened a secure channel to the Dynamite Agency's tactical server. He knew the backdoor because he had designed the firewall himself, anonymously. 2 years ago as a consultant gift, he began to type. Fast. Frantic. He didn't filter his thoughts. He didn't edit the Deku out of the text. He just poured his brain onto the screen. Subject, counter-strategy / neoparanormal weakness profile. Target, dynamite. 1. Villain A, microwave, has a 3-second heat sink vent on his left shoulder. It opens after every pulse. A precise AP shot can jam it. 2. Villain B, gravity, is using a localized emitter in his boots. Destroy the ground beneath him. He needs contact to anchor the field. 3. Villain C, vacuum, cannot maintain the void if the air pressure fluctuates rapidly. Use explosion shockwaves, not to hit him, but to disrupt the atmosphere. Make the air pop. Note, Shoto needs to cool his left side immediately. His internal temp is critical. Tell him to vent through his feet. Izuka hit send. Go get him, Kaken, he whispered. Part 3, the packet. Katsuki Bakugo was midair, blasting across the city toward the station, when his HUD visor chirped. Priority intel received. Source unknown. I don't have time for spam. Bakugo yelled, banking around the skyscraper. Sender, ghost. Tag, urgent/tactical. Bakugo froze midair, using small explosions to hover. Ghost? That was the name the police used for the hacker who had been solving cold cases. Bakugo had dismissed it as some vigilante nerd with a computer. Read it. Bakugo commanded his suit's AI. The text scrolled across his retina display. Villain A has a 3-second heat sink, left shoulder. Destroy the ground beneath him. Make the air pop. Bakugo's eyes widened. The information was specific. Insanely specific. It wasn't just hit them hard. It was hit them here, at this second, using this physics principle. Make the air pop, Bakugo repeated. That was a phrase from their second year at UA. During a training exercise, Deku had said, Kaken, if you make the air pop, you can disrupt the sound waves of Jiro's attack. Bakugo felt a chill that had nothing to do with the altitude. He blasted his engines, accelerating to Mach speed. I'm coming! Part 4, the turn. Shoto was on one knee. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. The villain leader loomed over him. Endeavor's masterpiece. Broken. Get away from him! Uravity screamed. She dropped from the ceiling, swinging a massive pillar of debris. Vector change, the gravity villain said boredly. He waved a hand. The pillar stopped midair, then shot backward, slamming Uraraka into the wall. Ochako! Shoto yelled. Checkmate, the leader said, raising the microwave emitter. Boom! The ceiling exploded. Not from sound this time. From pure, unadulterated nitroglycerin. Dai-yi! Bakugo descended like a meteor. But he didn't aim for the villain. He aimed for the space between the villains. He landed, and instead of a direct blast, he unleashed a rapid-fire staccato of explosions. Bam 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 bam! The shockwaves were erratic. They created a pressure chaos in the room. The vacuum villain stumbled, clutching his chest. My pressure seal! It's fluctuating, now! Bakugo roared. He didn't look at his teammates. He just issued orders. Shoto! Vent your heat through your feet and freeze the ground under gravity face. Shoto didn't question it. He stomped. Ice shot down, shattering the floor tiles. The gravity villain, losing his stable footing, slipped. The field dissipated. Ida gasped, weightless again. AP shot! Autocannon! Bakugo spun, aiming his gauntlet. He waited. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. The microwave villain fired a beam. And just as he did, a small vent opened on his shoulder to release steam. Gotcha! Bakugo fired a concentrated beam of energy the size of a needle. It threaded the needle of the chaos, and struck the vent perfectly. The villain's weapon backfired. The emitter exploded in his hand. Arg! My arm! Uraraka! Float the debris! Bakugo commanded. Ida! Round up! The tide turned in 10 seconds. With the specific weaknesses exploited, the neo-paranormals crumbled. They were glass cannons, powerful offensively, but structurally flawed. And someone had given Bakugo the blueprints. Minutes later, the villains were zip-tied and unconscious. The police were swarming the building. Bakugo stood in the center of the ruin, his chest heaving. Bakugo, Shoto said, limping over. That strategy? How did you know about the vent? How did you know about the air pressure? I didn't, Bakugo said. He tapped his visor. Intel. From the ghost. Shoto frowned. The hacker? How did they know? Bakugo didn't answer. He was rereading the message on his HUD. He scrolled to the bottom. There, in the metadata of the message, was a small, seemingly random string of characters attached to the file signature. All $might_gold_age_100%. It was a file naming convention. Specifically, it was the naming convention Izuki used for his fanboy folders when he was 14. Bakugo had seen it once on Deku's laptop when he was making fun of him. Bakugo's breath hitched. The sounds of the police sirens faded. The cheering of the rescued civilians turned to white noise. It's him, Bakugo whispered. What? Uraraka asked, limping over, holding her side. Bakugo looked at them. His eyes were wide, manic. The ghost. It's Deku. Part 5, The Dossier. 3 hours later. Police headquarters. The conference room was sterile. Detective Tsukachi sat at the head of the table. He looked tired. Bakugo, Shoto, and Uraraka sat opposite him. We traced the transmission, Tsukachi said, sliding a folder across the table. Or rather, we tried to. It's bounced through 7 different countries. Whoever sent this is a ghost in the machine. They don't exist. He exists, Bakugo growled. He grabbed the folder. Show me the raw data. Dynamite, Tsukachi sighed. I know you want to believe it's Midoriya. We all miss him. But this is a level of cyber warfare that requires years of training. Midoriya was a tactical genius, yes, but he wasn't a hacker. People learn, Shoto said softly. He's had 5 years. Look at the text, Detective Uraraka urged. She pointed to a printout of the intel. Look at the way it's written. Ideally. Hypothetically. Smash. It's his voice. Tsukachi rubbed his temples. I'm not saying it's impossible. But we have received a physical package as well. It arrived at the station front desk an hour ago. Addressed to Kaken. The room went silent. Tsukachi reached into a box and pulled out a thick, bound document. It looked like a book. It was taped together. The cover was hand-drawn with a black marker. Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 26. Subheading, The Neo-Paranormals, The Decay of Stability. Bakugo made a noise that sounded like a strangled sob. He snatched the book. The cover was worn. It smelled of cheap paper and coffee. He opened it. The handwriting. It was messy, scrawled, frantic. Every inch of the page was covered in notes, diagrams, sketches. Page 1, Why the Piece is Fragile. Page 10, Dynamite's New Gauntlets. Flaws in the Compression Chamber. Page 45, Uravity's center of gravity shifts when she's tired. Page 80, Shoto's ice is becoming brittle due to lower humidity in summer. He's been watching us, Uraraka whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. She reached out and touched the page. He's been watching us the whole time. He's not just watching, Bakugo said, his voice trembling with rage and relief. He's protecting us. This book, it's a manual on how to win. He analyzed the villains who attacked today weeks ago. Look at the date. He pointed to the top of a page. Entry date, April 4th. Today was April 25th. He knew they were coming, Shoto said. He tried to warn us. And we ignored him because we didn't know who he was, Tsukachi admitted, looking ashamed. Bakugo slammed the book shut. Where did this come from? Physically. Who dropped it off? A courier, Tsukachi said. We questioned him. He said a guy in a hoodie paid him cash in Yokohama to deliver it. Yokohama, Bakugo said. He stood up. Dynamite, wait, Tsukachi warned. Yokohama is a big city. And that district is complicated. It's a gray zone. I don't care. Bakugo walked to the window. He looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, in the sea of millions, was the idiot who had saved his life more times than he could count. The idiot who was currently sitting alone in the dark, writing notes to save them again. I need May, Bakugo said abruptly. The support engineer? Shoto asked. She can trace the syntax of the code he used for the maglev hack, Bakugo explained. She told me once that every coder has a fingerprint. Deku isn't a coder by trade. He's an analyst. He writes code like he writes notes, obsessively detailed. Make him find the origin point. Part 6, The Trace. Mei Hatsum's lab, the baby factory. Interesting. Very interesting. Mei Hatsum was hovering over 3 keyboards, her Zoom Quark eyes shifting rapidly. This code is a mess. It's inefficient. It's clunky. Can you trace it or not? Bakugo snapped. He was pacing the lab like a caged tiger. But, Mei continued, ignoring him. It's brilliant. It bypasses firewalls by asking them politely to open. It uses logic loops that shouldn't work. It's like the code is muttering at the system until the system gives up. That's him. Uraraka smiled through her tears. Found it. Mei hit a key. A map of Japan appeared on the giant screen. It zoomed in on Yokohama, then the port district, then a specific block of old warehouses near the docks. The signal originated from a localized mesh network in this grid, Mei explained. It's bouncing off 7 satellites, but the keystrokes were physical input from this location. Coordinates 35.44, 139.63. Bakugo memorized the numbers. He's in the shipping district, Shoto said. That's not a good place. It's where the Quarkless slums are. The reality hit them. The Quarkless slums. The hero who had held one for all, the greatest power in existence, was living in the slums. Let's go, Bakugo said. Part 7, The Hunt. They didn't take a team. They didn't tell the police. It was just the 3 of them. The big 3. They arrived in Yokohama at midnight. The rain was pouring, washing the grime of the city into the gutters. The warehouse district was a maze of rusted metal and shadowed alleys. Stay close, Bakugo ordered. We don't know if he has security measures. He won't hurt us, Uraraka said. I'm not worried about him hurting us, Bakugo said grimly. I'm worried about him running. They reached the coordinates. It was a nondescript building, a rusted corrugated metal box sandwiched between 2 larger factories. There was no name on the door. Just a keypad. Bakugo looked at the keypad. Shoto, freeze the hinges. I don't want to trigger an alarm. Shoto nodded. He placed his hand on the doorframe. Ice crept over the metal, making it brittle. Bakugo placed his palm on the center of the door. He didn't use an explosion. He just used brute force. With a sharp crack, the frozen hinges snapped. The door swung open. They stepped inside. The room was dark, lit only by the standby lights of a dozen servers. The hum of cooling fans filled the air. It was freezing. Izuku? Uraraka called out softly. No answer. They walked further in. They saw the desk. It was empty. The chair was spun around, facing the door. On the monitors, the screensaver was bouncing, but on the center screen, there was a sticky note. A physical, yellow sticky note stuck to the glass. Bakugo walked up to it. He shined his flashlight on the note. It was handwriting he knew better than his own. Hi Kaken. You found me faster than I calculated. My probability model was off by 12%. Good job. Please go home. I'm not the person you're looking for anymore. He knew, Bakugo whispered. He crumpled the note in his fist. He knew we were coming. Look, Shoto pointed to the corner. There was a cot. A sleeping bag. And on the wall, the corkboard. Photos of them. Newspaper clippings. And in the center, the framed photo of Class 1A. But the photo was 5 years old. Beside it, there was a new addition. A drawing. It was a sketch of Uraraka, Bakugo, and Shoto from the gala a few days ago. They were drawn as towering figures, radiant and strong, and at their feet, a tiny, shadowed figure looked up at them. Uraraka put her hand over her mouth to stifle a sob. He thinks he's just a shadow. Bakugo stared at the drawing. He's not a shadow, Bakugo said, his voice thick with emotion. He's the light source. He turned to the empty room. I know you're watching, Deku. Bakugo yelled at the security camera in the corner. I know you can hear me. You think this is a game? You think you can just ghost us and play hero from a keyboard? The camera lens zoomed in slightly. A mechanical whir. We aren't leaving! Bakugo shouted. I don't care if I have to tear this city apart brick by brick. I'm going to find you, and I'm going to drag you home. On the monitor, the text cursor started blinking. Someone, somewhere remote, was typing. Characters appeared on the screen, green against the black. Go be heroes. The world needs you. It doesn't need me. Then, the power cut. The servers died. The lights went out. The room was plunged into total darkness. He cut the hard line, Shoto said, igniting a small flame in his hand. He's running, Bakugo said. He turned and sprinted for the door. He can't be far. He was typing just now. Spread out. Search the grid. They rushed out into the rain. The alley was empty, but high above, on a fire escape 3 buildings away, a figure in a green parka watched them run. Izuku Midoriya pulled his hood tighter. He held a tablet in his hand, having just remotely killed the power to his sanctuary. He watched Bakugo screaming his name into the rain. He watched Uraraka fall to her knees. His heart broke. It shattered into a million pieces. I'm sorry, he whispered. He turned and melted into the shadows of the night. The chase was on. Part 1. The War Room. The conference room at the Dynamite Agency was soundproof, bulletproof, and utterly silent, save for the hum of a high-end air filtration system. It was 3 a.m. The city of Tokyo slept under a blanket of neon and drizzle, but inside this room, 3 of its greatest heroes were wide awake. Katsuki Bakugo stood at the head of the table. He had discarded his hero mask, but he was still in his bodysuit, the orange and black material scuffed from the previous day's raid. His eyes were red-rimmed, burning with a manic intensity that frightened his sidekicks. On the table lay the ghost file. The physical copy of Hero Analysis Volume 26. We are not treating this like a reunion, Bakugo said. His voice was a low growl, vibrating in his chest. We are treating this like a high-priority extraction mission. The target is elusive, highly intelligent, and compromised. Compromised? Ochako Uraraka sat to his left, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she hadn't touched. She looked pale, her usual buoyancy replaced by a steel-edged anxiety. He's not a villain, Katsuki. He's Izuku. He's mental, Bakugo snapped, though there was no malice in it, only frustration. He's living off the grid, hacking government databases, and sleeping in warehouses. He thinks he's unworthy of breathing the same air as us. That is a compromised mindset. If we just walk up and knock, he runs. If we corner him, he panics. We have to be smarter than him. That is a tall order, Shoto Todoroki said from the right. He was reading through the analysis notebook again, his finger tracing the frantic, scribbled notes. He predicted the structural failure of the maglev station down to the second. He knows our quirks better than we do. Look at this note on my eyesight regulation. Shoto turned the book around. In the margin, in green ink, Shoto drops his left shoulder 0.4 seconds before a max output freeze. It's a tell. A villain with enhanced reflexes will aim for the ribcage. I didn't even know I did that, Shoto admitted quietly. Exactly, Bakugo slammed his hand on the table. He has eyes everywhere. Which means we can't use official channels. No police. No sidekicks. No radio chatter that he can intercept. We go analog. Analog? Uraraka asked. Paper maps. Bakugo pointed to a large, physical map of the Kanto region spread out on the table. Hand signals. We move in civilian clothes until the breach. We track him the old-fashioned way. Where do we start? Uraraka asked, looking at the map. He abandoned the Yokohama warehouse. He wiped the servers. He could be anywhere in Japan. No, Bakugo shook his head. He's a creature of habit. And he's sentimental, even if he tries to hide it. Bakugo tapped a finger on a specific district on the map. A district that had been destroyed and rebuilt, a place of ghosts. Kamino Ward, Shoto said. It's ground zero, Bakugo said. It's where All Might fell. It's where the symbol of peace ended. Deku, he's obsessed with legacy. He thinks he failed All Might by losing One for All. He'd want to be close to the monument, but hidden in the muck. Plus, the rent is cheap, and the power grid is a mess of illegal splices, perfect for hiding a server farm. So we sweep Kamino? Uraraka stood up. That's a massive area. We don't sweep, Bakugo grinned, a sharp, predatory expression. We hunt. We look for the footprint. Not a physical one, but a resource one. High-speed fiber optic cables. Massive electricity usage. Deliveries of specialized electronic parts. He threw a stack of papers onto the map. I called in a favor from an underground broker I busted last year. These are the delivery manifests for the gray market electronics in Kamino for the last 6 months. Look for processors. Cooling fans. Encryption drives. Uraraka picked up a sheet. This is thousands of entries. Then start reading, Bakugo commanded. We find him. We grab him. We bring him home. Nobody sleeps until we have an address. Part 2. The Shadow Economy. The sun rose over Kamino Ward, casting long shadows through the alleys. It was a district of contrasts. The main avenue was pristine, dominated by the massive bronze statue of All Might pointing toward the sky. Tourists flocked there to take photos. But 3 streets over, the buildings were older, patched together with corrugated metal and hope. This was where the people who couldn't afford the shining center lived. Uraraka walked down a narrow street, pulling her beanie low. She wore a baggy trench coat over her hero suit. She felt exposed, not because of villains, but because she felt like she was trespassing on a life Izuku had built without them. She stopped at a small electronics repair shop. It was barely a hole in the wall, smelling of solder and ozone. "Excuse me," she said to the proprietor, an old woman with magnifying goggles for eyes. "We're closed," the woman grunted, not looking up from a circuit board. "I'm not looking for repairs," Uraraka said softly. She placed a photo on the counter. It wasn't the hero headshot. It was a picture she had taken on her phone during their second year. Izuku laughing, eating a crepe, with cream on his nose. "I'm looking for a friend." The woman glanced at the photo. Her mechanical eyes zoomed in and out. She stiffened. "Don't know him," she said too quickly. Uraraka leaned in. "Please. I know he comes here. He needs parts for his computers. He probably pays in cash. He's polite." He mutters to himself. The woman sighed, putting down her soldering iron. She looked at Uraraka, really looked at her, and recognition dawned. "You're Gravity Girl." "Uravity." Uraraka nodded. "If you're here to arrest him," the woman said, picking up a screwdriver like a weapon, "you can get lost. That boy fixed my generator for free when the typhoon hit last year. He reprogrammed the neighborhood security bots to stop the gangs from shaking us down." Uraraka felt a pang in her chest. Of course. Even in hiding, even with nothing, he was saving people. "I'm not here to arrest him," Uraraka said, her voice trembling. I love him. We just want him to come home." The woman searched Uraraka's face. She saw the exhaustion, the raw emotion. She lowered the screwdriver. "He doesn't come here anymore," the woman said quietly. "Too paranoid. He sends runners. Kids from the orphanage. But he buys a lot of coolant. Industrial grade. The kind you use for servers running hot." "Where does he send the runners?" "The Hive," the woman said. "Old apartment block on the north edge. Used to be Yakuza territory. It's mostly abandoned now. But the power usage on the 4th floor? It lights up like a Christmas tree on the thermal scanners." Uraraka bowed deeply. "Thank you? Thank you so much. Tell him." The woman hesitated. "Tell the green ghost to eat a vegetable once in a while. He looks like a skeleton." Part 3. Triangulation. Shoto Todoroki stood on a rooftop overlooking the Hive. It was a fortress of urban decay. A 10-story concrete block covered in graffiti, fire escapes clinging to the sides like rusted ribs. Most of the windows were boarded up. He pressed his earpiece. "I have visual on the target structure. North Kamino. Block 4. I'm 2 streets away." Bakugo's voice crackled, tight with anticipation. "Uraraka? I'm approaching from the south alley," Uraraka replied. "I'm clearing civilians. There are a few squatters on the lower levels, but the upper floors seem empty." "He's on the 4th floor," Shoto said, adjusting his binoculars. "Thermal imaging confirms a massive heat signature in the northeast corner unit. It's hotter than a sauna in there. He's running a supercomputer." "Is there movement?" Bakugo asked. "One heat signature. Human. Stationary. Sitting at a desk." Shoto watched the silhouette through the thermoscope. The person was hunched over, rocking slightly back and forth. The posture was unmistakable. "It's him," Shoto said. The relief was so profound he almost lost his balance. "I have eyes on Deku. Hold position," Bakugo ordered. "Do not engage yet. If he sees eyes, he'll know it's you. He'll have an escape route planned for your specific quirk." "Understood," Shoto said. "What's the plan?" "We hit him from 3 sides simultaneously," Bakugo said. "Uraraka takes the window. Shoto, you block the fire escape. I'm taking the front door. We give him 0 room to maneuver. We don't fight him. We contain him. Speed is everything." "He's quirkless, Bakugo," Uraraka said gently over the comms. "We don't need to be this aggressive." "You didn't see the trap logs in the warehouse," Bakugo countered. "He rigged the place to blow the servers if the door opened wrong. He's not going to fight us with power. He's going to fight us with evasion. We have to be faster than his paranoia." Shoto watched the heat signature stand up. The figure paced the room. "He's moving," Shoto warned. He's looking out the window. "Did he spot you?" "I don't think so. I'm camouflaged." But down in the room, Izuku Midoriya wasn't looking at Shoto. He was looking at a small, jury-rigged sensor taped to the glass. It was a vibration detector, and it had just picked up the rhythmic thud of heavy boots running 2 streets away. Boots that exploded with sweat. Part 4. The Rabbit and the Wolf. Inside apartment 404, the world slowed down. Izuku froze. He was holding a cup of instant noodles. He set it down slowly. Vibration pattern, heavy impact, rapid cadence. Weight approximate 80 kilograms. Origin, south-southwest. Thermal sensor on the roof, drop in ambient temperature by 4 degrees. "Ice. They're here," Izuku whispered. He didn't panic. Panic was inefficient. Panic wasted oxygen. He had run scenarios for this moment 1,000 times in his head. He had hoped he would never have to use them. "Scenario C4, he muttered. "The pincer." He turned to his main console. "Delete all," he commanded. The screens flashed red. Reformatting drives. He grabbed his backpack, the bug-out bag. It was always packed. First aid, cache, encrypted drive, smoke bombs, grapple hook. He didn't take the clothes. He didn't take the food. He looked at the wall. The corkboard. The photos. He hesitated. For 1 second, his hand hovered over the framed picture of Class 1A. Crash! The window shattered. Uravity burst through the glass, floating on a piece of debris, pink energy glowing around her fingers. "Izuku! Stop!" At the same exact moment, the front door exploded inward. Not with fire, but with a kinetic kick. Dynamite stood in the frame, smoke curling from his palms. "Don't you dare move, nerd!" And from the fire escape, ice surged over the railing, sealing the exit. Shoto stepped onto the balcony. They had him, triangulated. Cornered. A quirkless man in a 10-foot room against 3 of the top 10 heroes. Izuku looked at them. He looked tired. His eyes were sunken, dark circles bruising the skin beneath them. He wore a stained t-shirt and cargo pants. His hair was a wild, tangled mane, but he didn't look scared. He looked sad. "Hi guys," Izuku said softly. "It's over, Deku." Bakugo stepped forward, hands raised but palms open. He was trying to be gentle, but his body radiated tension. "We're done playing hide and seek. You're coming with us." "I can't do that, Kaken," Izuku said. "We aren't asking." Bakugo yelled. "Look at you! You're living in a rat hole. You're wasting away." "Izuku, please," Uraraka landed softly, stepping over the glass. Tears were already streaming down her face. Just come home. We miss you. I miss you." Izuku's gaze flickered to her. For a moment, the mask slipped, and raw longing poured out. "I miss you too, Ochako. More than you know." "Then why?" Shoto asked, stepping in from the balcony. "Why run?" "Because the war isn't over," Izuku said. He backed up until his legs hit the desk. His hand rested near a red button on the console. "And as long as I'm around you, you're vulnerable. You'll worry about me. You'll protect me. And that split second of distraction will get you killed. That's our choice to make." Bakugo roared. He lunged. Izuku didn't flinch. He pressed the button. Flash. The room didn't explode. It was blinding light. A magnesium flare, rigged into the ceiling fixture, detonated with the brightness of a small sun. My eyes! Uraraka cried out, covering her face. Shoto instinctively threw up an ice wall to shield them. In that split second of blindness and confusion, Izuku moved. He didn't run for the door. He didn't run for the window. He dropped. He had cut a trapdoor into the floorboards weeks ago, concealed under a rug. He pulled the release, and gravity took him. He fell into the apartment below, Unit 304. He rolled, absorbing the impact. His knees screamed in protest, but he ignored the pain. He sprinted for the balcony of the third floor. Upstairs, the light faded. He went down! Bakugo shouted, blasting a hole through Shoto's ice wall. He saw the open hole in the floor. Damn it! Bakugo dove through the hole. He landed in Unit 304 just in time to see Izuku leaping off the balcony. DKU! Izuku was in the air. He fired a grapple line from a support item on his wrist, something old and clunky, probably salvaged. The hook caught a streetlight pole. He swung, changing his trajectory, swinging into the narrow alleyway between the buildings where the shadows were deepest. Don't let him reach the sewers! Shoto yelled, sliding down an ice ramp on the outside of the building. Izuku hit the ground running. He knew this alley. He knew the loose grate on the storm drain 20 meters ahead. He sprinted. His lungs burned. He wasn't as fast as he used to be. He could feel Bakugo gaining on him. The sound of explosions was getting closer. Pop, pop, pop! Bakugo was flying, using his explosions to propel himself at breakneck speed. He was going to catch him. Izuku reached into his pocket. He pulled out 3 small metal spheres, Meihatsume's failed prototypes. Sticky balls. He threw them behind him. Bakugo saw them coming. He blasted them. Mistake. The balls were filled with a rapid expanding foam that hardened on contact with heat. The explosion triggered them instantly. A massive wall of gray, concrete-hard foam erupted in the alleyway, sealing it shut. Bakugo slammed into the foam wall face first. Gra! He punched the foam, blasting chunks away, but it was thick. By the time he broke through, the alley was empty. The storm drain grate was slightly askew. Bakugo stood over the drain, chest heaving, steam rising from his skin. He looked down into the darkness. You slippery bastard! He fell to his knees. He punched the asphalt. So close.